Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Real Birding Podcast, the show where we crack open the world of birding and talk about our own birding adventures. I'm Will Keller, coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
I'm Caleb Putnam in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
We have a fun show for you guys this week. We are talking about a controversy in the world of birding. You think there wouldn't be as much controversy as there is, but this week we are going to talk about the famous spotted owl, specifically the northern spotted owl, and recent news to kill off about 500,000 barred owls to protect this endangered species. It is big news and it is high stakes, so let's break it down. But before we do, let's do our bird quiz. Last week we played for y'all the song of a common nighthawk, and Chipper ATZ got that correct. Good job, Chipper. This is one of the first times where we had somebody guess the wrong answer for a bird quiz, and somebody guessed American woodcock. And if you were going to get that bird wrong, that is exactly what you were going to mistake it for. They sound very similar, and they're both nocturnal, and you got to wonder if there's some sort of convergent evolution behind the birds sounding similar, like it pierces the night somehow in a similar way. I don't know.
Some kind of mimicry or something crazy. Who knows?
Yeah. So as a quick reminder, this week we are going to play for you the song or call of a North American bird, and you are going to guess the name of that bird in the comments for a chance to get a shout out at the beginning of next week's episode. All right, let's do it. All right, that's all you get. Without further ado, let's talk about spotted owls. Let's go. Caleb, how are we doing?
Great. Will, how about yourself?
Can't complain other than the heat. It just keeps getting worse as it tends to do this time of year.
Yeah, we're back up to 90 again here, which is a bit on the warm side for me, so I'm struggling there. But I'd like to start this conversation off by asking you, have you actually seen or observed a spotted owl? Because this is like my number one nemesis now. I have missed them, I don't even know, 8 times every time I've tried. In Arizona, California, I always miss them. Washington State. Have you seen it?
So no, and I to be fair, I haven't spent very much time in habitat where they could be. I've spent a little bit of time birding in southeast Arizona where you could see them in that Mexican population. And in January, I went to kind of the Seattle area with my friend Tallis and Chase, our friends Tallis and Chase. And we spent 2 nights looking for spotted owl in beautiful Pacific Northwest, western red cedar, rainforest. And the habitat felt amazing, but we just couldn't get ears on one. Definitely didn't get eyes on one.
That's a common experience, as it turns out. And I think it's very relevant to what we're going to talk about today, because they're not doing very well up in that northern end of their range. There's certainly a species that we could see the end of them, in a century's time if we don't take action. Have a look at this map here.
Let's see it.
So this is a western bird. It's mostly a West Coast bird, but they are also a little bit in the western interior. And so you've got these 3 subspecies, the northern going up all the way into British Columbia, although I think it's really rare up there and endangered in Canada. And then at the top of the Sierra Nevadas there, you've got changes subspecies into the California spotted. And then all those interior birds in like Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and Arizona are the Mexican version of it. And I don't think any of them are doing really well, as far as I know. I think, in particular, the northern and California one are quite threatened these days. Like I think the northern's down to like 4,000 pairs or something, and that might have even been like outdated. That might have been 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Could even be lower than that now. Probably is.
Yeah, let's pull up some pictures of the northern spotted owl, or I guess spotted owl in general. I don't know how different they look across their different populations, but I think what people will notice at first is that it looks strikingly similar to the barred owl of the eastern forests and recently the western forests.
Very similar. Yeah, absolutely. Biggest thing I notice when I see these photos is if you look on the underparts here, they actually do have kind of white oval spots. It lacks the vertical streaking of the belly of barred owl. And I'll just quickly switch over to a barred so we can just nip this in the bud.
Absolutely.
So on barred owl, you see these vertical streaks, and it's mostly white underneath with kind of brown vertical streaks. But when I come back to spotted, you don't have those, and it's more brown, but with like white circular or oval blotches. That's kind of one of the main things that I notice. I understand they're also like 15% smaller than bards. They're a pretty small bird.
Yeah. And you know what else is interesting is they sound very similar. They kind of sound like cousins of each other, which they are. They're obviously very closely related genetically.
Here's spotted owl.
Maybe a little more high pitched and a little more excited than a lot of barred owls, but yeah.
And just not as emphatic either. So like I'll switch over to Bard here and we'll compare them.
Sure.
Bard are just happy to just sound like a wild animal, like kind of like a
Oh, yeah.
wild dog here. They are not shy. They do not hold back. They are wild. And then you'll get them caterwauling and going wild back in the woods. And I've always noticed too, it's fun when you're doing barred owl tapes at night. A lot of the times the neighborhood dogs will pipe up and all the houses nearby will have dogs barking in the middle of the night. It's almost like they think it might be a dog or something. I don't even know.
Absolutely. To sort of help set the stage for this debate, let's talk a little bit about the natural history of these two species. Let's start with the barred owl, because for many of our listeners, it is the default owl that they come across in their backyards, in the woods. You hear them at night. They fly in front of your car while you're driving. So this is a bird that is native to the eastern half of North America. They range from Florida all the way over to Texas, north, and then east all the way through Quebec and all the way to the Atlantic coast.
Mm-hmm.
They love broadleaf forests, so that classic, Carolinian woodland or whatever you want to call it, oaks, hickories, maples. This is what this species gets down on. And if we can start talking about how it started to range out west, you think about what humans bring along with them when they create communities, especially European-style communities in the northern Great Plains, as they plant oak trees and fruit trees. And just that little bit of cover in the northern Great Plains, it's theorized that's what allowed barred owls to sort of, over the span of probably 200 years, make it all the way over to those western woodlands where they were previously isolated because of the Great Plains.
Yeah, and this graphic that I took from Dr. David Wien's talk, which the notes for this are in the show notes, so that we're citing his paper. This is not original work to us. This shows the original range map of barred owl in blue and the range map of northern spotted owl in the pink on the left side. And sometime in about the late 1800s and early 1900s, there was the shift that Will just referred to, and it resulted in this other map here that I'm pulling up. And you can see that they spread across the northern plains and they up in Canada, and they skipped eastern Montana and the Dakotas and such, right? They're not in those grassy landscapes. They are in big woodlots with tall trees. As I'll switch over to the eBird map now, which shows you what it looks like in the modern era, is that they have now spread all the way down into Southern California. I mean, this is a remarkable shift. When I lived in Western Montana, they were very common in the Rockies here. And now you're even getting them in Kern County, California, and in the area of San Francisco.
It would be like if black-headed grosbeaks automatically became a common bird in Florida. It's that drastic, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And the cost that this came with is that as the generalist barred owl, which is it's a larger bird, it's literally able to just kick the spotted owls out of these giant cavities in the tops of huge old growth trees that they nest in and take over those nests. Also, it's a little bit more flexible habitat wise. And so as the barred owl came into the West, including Washington and Oregon, it came in and the spotted owl immediately started declining. And we have some graphics here to kind of illustrate this one as well.
Yeah, so here's a great example. Right now, we're looking at an area of Western Oregon, and this is also from Dr. David Wien's study or presentation that he gave. So all of these red dots here are spotted owl pairs from the year 1990. So as you can see, barred owls had probably only recently gotten onto the scene and don't really have a great foothold. But as time goes on, here's 2002. It's about 50-50. Maybe spotted owls have a slight edge. And then 2012, spotted owls are on their back foot. They have absolutely taken a punch to the mouth, and it's looking dire. And I think this is when people really started to take a look at this and say, we got to do some research and figure out what's going on here. And that led to this 2015 study. So basically, Dr. Wiens set up several different control plots and study areas. And in the study areas, they decided they were going to lethally remove barred owls. We can get into the ethics of that later. We definitely will, actually. But what you see in this red area, pay attention to what happens to the spotted owls, which are the red dots, and the barred owls, which are the blue dots, as from before and after they take this lethal measure. So we not only see spotted owls start to recover in the areas where barred owls have been removed, but we also see that spotted owls are all but absent in the areas where there was no lethal removal.
What it did is it caused the decline of the spotted owl that was occurring at about 2 or 3% a year on the long scale to just negate. So it didn't cause the spotted owl to increase, but it negated the losses, and it causes the spotted owl to become, it can maintain its numbers at the level that it's at. And really, when you have a bird that's well under like 4,000 pairs, and you're looking at the long term with these trends, it's not tenable. That bird is going to go extinct at some point. So the number one management tool that researchers were found was going to work was going to be the controlling of barred owls by lethal means. And highly controversial. There are people on different sides of this, ethicists. The animal rights crowd in particular has been very vocal against this, because we're talking about over a 30-year period, as many as 500,000 barred owls lives would be taken in order to accommodate the spotted owl. And we don't get into these to tell everybody what you have to believe, but I do think it is a really important one, because I've always been of the idea ever since I was a kid, and certainly as I went through school and so on, is that the best thing we can do is to maintain the biodiversity of this planet. It's one of the most valuable assets that the planet has. It's one of the reasons that the Earth is a place that we would want to live in, right? Is because you can have an intact biodiversity to the greatest possible extent. And I also think, for me, it's immoral to allow species to go extinct. And people will say, well, it's not the barred owl's fault, it's people's fault. Well, I agree with all of that. All these problems, almost all of them, stem from human-caused sources. But at the end of the day, 85% of the American public supports the prevention of extinction and the conservation of endangered species. I think that is the value that has to win out here. I mean, we have to do whatever we need to do to make sure that these spotted owls and that genetic lineage doesn't go extinct.
Yeah. And I want to point to, and this will be a good time to get into a little bit more of the natural history of the spotted owl. The spotted owl or the northern spotted owl is emblematic of the northwestern coastal old growth rainforests. These are ancient forests with coast redwoods and western red cedar and these massive spruces. It's some of the most beautiful habitat. And in the 20th century, the place started getting logged, and one consequence of this is that spotted owls started to go away. So spotted owls became sort of the informal mascot of protecting this highly endangered ecosystem and highly unique ecosystem as well. So people will remember in the 1990s the Save the Spotted Owl campaign, and this was fundamentally an anti-logging campaign. This old growth wood is very sought after. It's very valuable. It's needed to build things like furniture and wooden instruments like guitars and violins and cellos and whatnot.
And to support people making a living in the local economy, which obviously we do. I think I want to draw attention to one thing here. Logging itself is not bad for conservation. I want to be very clear about this. For many species like golden-winged warblers and chestnut-sideds and kirtlands, we can go down the list. There's tons of them. They require disturbance of mature forest to be able to survive. And the difference in this case is that spotted owl can't do well in the early successional stages that follow after a logging event. So the key thing is, like, when you look in this photo, you see that the trees at the left edge of that clearing are mature trees that are at least probably 100 years old minimum. And that tall canopy with the really large diameter trunks is is where the cavities that the spotted owl's nesting in develops. And if the tree is too small, it can't nest there. It
Yeah.
has to be in the cavity.
Not to mention the structural diversity that old growth forests have, where there's trees of many different ages and just complexity in the ground level to the mid-story level, all the way up to the canopy. It's one of the most biodiverse areas on the entire continent. There are tons of amphibians, and there's even this arboreal shrew that lives only in the tops of these massive trees. And another interesting thing is that barred owls are a lot more opportunistic than spotted owls. So people have also taken note that the population of things like salamanders and frogs are also declining in these areas, even though it's where the habitat is still intact. Because there's now barred owls instead of spotted owls, it's having a downstream effect on the entire ecosystem.
And I think some of those effects are probably not even fully understood now. But yeah, there's certainly spotted owl decline is not the only negative effect of having barred owls come into this area. So, from where I'm sitting, this is good management because the studies have been done. We know what causes the decline. We know what's the most important factor causing it. They've documented in the published literature with statistical significance. And they've also tested will it fix the problem? And as we showed earlier, it's pretty clear that the spotted owl does just fine if you can get the barred owls out of there. So I think that is good science in that, one question is, will it work only over the short term or will it actually work in the long term? And that may be a bit of an unknown, and it may require consistently coming back, at all times. Maybe 50 years on, we got to do another program to reinstate it. That's certainly not a strength of the program, but we as a society have to choose: do we want this thing to go extinct or not? It's
Yeah.
it's basically that simple, because it's going to if we don't do something about this.
Yeah. So, Caleb, I want to try to strongman this argument. So, I'm going to present to you what I think is the best argument for not doing this call of what will amount to probably 500,000 barred owls.
Give it to me.
So the animal rights argument is very strong. It's brutal. I mean, what they're trying to do is they're going to go in during the breeding season, and they are going to use shotguns they're going to play tape of barred owls singing. They're going to lure the parents away from the nest, and they are going to shoot barred owls
not during the nesting period. That's in the management plan.
Is that right?
Correct. It would only be done outside the nesting period for that reason.
So I've heard on social media, I've seen critiques of this saying that what they're going to do is basically cause parents to perish, and then the young are going to starve to death in the nest. So that
is not correct.
An unfair characterization. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just false. It's wrong.
It's kind of frustrating. So that is a weak argument. Either way, I was going to say, I think that's kind of a weak argument because in management, we do all sorts of things. We drop rodenticide from helicopters to kill off millions of rats on islands where there used to not be predators so that seabirds can thrive. So I don't think that's a great argument. I think the best argument is that we're kind of in this sunk cost fallacy moment with conservation of the spotted owl. And we have spent so much political capital as environmentalists and conservationists on the species dating back almost 40 years now. And because we are now losing ground and we're seeing that the spotted owl is eventually going to perish, then that gives all sorts of ammunition to the people who oppose this all along to say, wow, we did everything you said. We didn't cut trees down near spotted owls. And look, we people's livelihoods were put in jeopardy. The local economies were stunted because of this, and you still couldn't protect this species. What a waste. Going forward, we're never going to listen to environmentalists again. So some people that are critiquing this call of barred owls are saying, you guys are just doing this crazy thing to justify this crazy war that you've been fighting against the timber industry for the last 40 years. And my response to that is, you might be right. This might not work. And the question I have is, are you okay with losing an iconic North American species? Is that okay? Can we tolerate that? Or should we take every single measure possible to prevent the extinction of the northern spotted owl? How do you take that argument?
I agree that the American public doesn't support the extinction of anything. They don't. It's very clear in the polling, and it's a nonpartisan issue. As to whether there was like political wrangling going on, or they're taking the optics into account, I mean, there's always a threat of that, right? I mean, Fish and Wildlife Service and DNR type agencies are political agencies at the end of the day. They do have to answer to the elected politicians. And so as the pendulum swings one way and the other, you can see influences in there that aren't in line with the science. But again, we've got a set of published peer-reviewed papers that have tested all of this and worked out what has to be done with the owl. And that's the main thing that I like to address. Is I don't like to get into the political side of it as much. Obviously, it's relevant. I find it noisy and unhelpful a lot of the time. But um, I think in this case, it's quite clear that the choice that we have. And I want to go back and make sure we don't miss it. I would say that animal rights activists, probably their key argument is that the individual barred owls have every right to live their lives out. It's not their fault that they're reproducing in the wrong areas. What do you say to that?
I say that's fine, but this bird is going to go extinct. So it really is a cost benefit analysis at the end of the day. And this is a good time. I'm going to present my screen really quick. I found this article where someone interviewed two different animal rights or animal ethicists, and I want to just share this first one here. This is a response to the question. This is William Lynn, who is an ethicist. Dr. Lynn, I understand that the experience of designing and leading the ethics review for the initial barred owl experiment persuaded you to support it. And William Lynn said, I must admit, I was skeptical about the original experiment, but the conversations we had about the experiments, the evidence that was presented, and the thoughtfulness about how and why the experiment was going to be done eventually convinced me. I became a strong proponent, even though it made me very morally uncomfortable. And then if I can just continue down to interviewing another ethicist named Francisco Santiago Avila, he makes a really good argument against the call. He says, in bioethics, you're generally encouraged to do everything you can to save an individual, up to the point where you start causing harm to others. If I'm responsible for someone and they're dying because they need a heart transplant, for instance, I don't go out and kill someone else so that I can take their heart. And that's usually the way I think about these situations. Um, and it's hard for me. I'm not going to sit here and disagree with a professional ethicist, a professional philosopher here. But my gut reaction is that these birds aren't people. And at the end of the day, I don't think we can treat them with the exact same rules that we treat people. There has to be something to be said for the overall health of an ecosystem. And I don't think allowing things to go extinct is morally justifiable, and I think that supersedes the lives of individual birds.
And I want to steel man the argument of animal rights activists. There is something to be said that sentient beings should be given the benefit of the doubt and given the opportunity to live their life out. And if you're going to take their life, I would say you should make sure they don't suffer. If that's the decision that we have to go with. So there is a grain of truth of what they're saying for sure, and there's plenty of instances where I think I would support that. But I think the last bioethicist alluded to it. It's when that is at odds with something else bigger than one individual, and that's the existence of a whole other species. Then we have to start talking about what priority takes precedence here. And I think I'm clear cut on this one. Preventing extinction, you're going to have to do whatever it takes to do it. That's where I'm at on it. I think maintaining the biodiversity that we have is our responsibility, and particularly in light of the fact that humans are the ones driving most of these negative changes in biodiversity.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that they don't have a point. It's just that the prioritization of it for me, and I think for the American public at large, when you pull them, is to save endangered species. That's just the more important value that we have.
Yeah. I see a lot of anthropomorphizing in honestly the kind of conservation community in general, which may not always be fair. Like, people will say, this barred owl is just trying to live its life, and just put yourself in that barred owl's shoes. And on one hand, I would say that's impossible. And on the other hand, I would say, well, put yourself in the spotted owl's shoes. You know what I mean? They've been put under this insane stress from people directly from logging and indirectly from the invasion of barred owls that was only made possible because of Western practices in terms of development across the northern Great Plains. So either way you spin it, there is going to be hardship going on between these two species.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. If you're strictly operating from the animal rights perspective here, what about the right of that spotted owl who has a nest cavity and has their own babies and has been there for 25 years reproducing with 3 chicks a year, and all of a sudden a barred owl comes in, kicks them out of there, and knocks them out into oblivion? That individual spotted owl, and I think they might have even been documented killing spotted owls at one point too. I'd have to check on that one to make sure, but at the very least, does that spotted owl not have some kind of rights to keep going about its life just the same way as any other bird? That's got to carry some weight, right? If we're being logically consistent there.
Yeah. And I also want to highlight that, neither of us are philosophers or ethicists. And I in 2022, I took an animal ethics course in college. And man, did I think I had it all figured out before that. And I went in there and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's all these different frames to think about things. It does get complicated, and it's not the kind of thing that can really be solved necessarily in a conversation like this. But there are real life decisions that have to be made. So I think we're doing our best here to sort of flesh out why we think this species has a right to exist and why this decision has to be made.
I would also like to add that, in this social media environment that we live in right now, the worst substantive discussions that are taking place get all the oxygen in the room. So when you go and watch these videos, the animal welfare videos and so on, and you read through the comments, which is where most of the people are getting these discussions, it's not substantive in a way that if people were present in person, they have to actually engage with each other's arguments. Then the progress can be made. And I think on this podcast, we definitely want the highly substantive one that steelmans everybody's views and then works toward some kind of common ground. And that can be really tough in these controversial ones. Cats, that's another one that really, really difficult to have productive discussions and respectful discussions because it's very charged.
Yeah, and to that end, if you disagree with us, let's talk about it in the comments.
Put it in the comments.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We are all about respectful disagreement and actually coming to reasonable conclusions. I personally could be moved on this argument. It's going to require probably data, but I know that there's good arguments to be made for and against this. So let's talk about it.
And Will, what other alternatives have been proposed by anybody across the board, whether a scientist, an ethicist, animal rights, or anything? What other alternatives are suggested that are even plausible at stopping the extinction of the spotted owl?
Well, what I've heard is habitat conservation and replanting these forests and revitalizing these forests. To which I say, you're still going to have to reckon with the fact that there's way too many barred owls for this species to thrive. Yep. In the Northwest. It's just
it's not going to work. The barred owls are in the tall forest there just as well now. In fact, they're dominant, as was shown by that map from Oregon.
Yeah,
there's more barred than spotted in there. One thing we also didn't mention, another way in which barred owls inhibit spotteds is by hybridizing with them. And I think this was maybe not fully understood or grasped at first, but these are known hybrid individuals from the Macaulay Library. And you can see it's kind of looks more like a spotted owl, but there is some vertical stuff in here. And the white splotches are kind of not organized into little oval shapes. It's kind of messier. And I think they sing a little bit intermediate too. One wonders exactly how much of this introgression and hybridization has been going on. And gosh, if it's going to dilute the gene pool over time, that is also not good. That is yet another way that the spotted owl gets pushed further toward extinction.
Well, this evokes another really interesting conversation, which is this kind of thing happens in a big enough time scale all the time. I mean, there's Homo sapien DNA in both you and I. So in some ways, I said Homo sapien. I meant
I hope
Homo
so.
Homo neanderthalis, Neanderthals.
Yeah. Right.
The species was considered separate, and yet when Homo sapiens, when we left Africa and went into Europe and Asia, we absorbed Neanderthals back into our own sort of species concept. So
Right.
at some point, this gets to the conversation of, well, what makes a species? Is how important is it to protect individual species? At the end of the day, if those genes are conserved in some way, is that still a part of this beautiful story that we call evolution on planet Earth? And I'm here for that argument. I can get with it. I just think at some point, you and I turn to the spiritual with these things. There is a specific thing, a form that we call spotted owls, and to lose that, whether it be through gene dilution or through straight up exclusion and extinction, to lose that either way is a tragedy.
Well, why would we stop the Mona Lisa from being burnt if you saw somebody walking up with gasoline and a torch? Why would you stop them? What is the answer?
Because that bit of matter that is that painting means something more than what its parts assemble, at least to me. It matters to me. I don't care if it matters to the universe. It matters personally to me, and I think deep down it matters to everybody.
I do too. I think it's sense of place. I think it makes the world the kind of place you'd want to live in. It's inspiration. It's with birds. There's something really beautiful, and not just birds, but the natural world in general. This was here independent of humans. Like it's the sea that we swim in. You know what I mean? And I really think that it makes the quality of life for people worth living, to live in an intact ecosystem.
Well, Caleb, should we wrap it up here?
Do it.
All right. Well, we really appreciate everybody following along. I think this is the 18th episode, not exactly a milestone, but we've been having a ton of fun. We hope you guys have been having a fun time following along. And we were talking this week, and we were curious. We get about at this point 100 views per episode, and although it could be more, I'm thinking, man, I haven't told 100 people about this podcast. I've always wondered how people find out about us. If you're on Spotify, I think we get about 50 listeners per episode on Spotify now. How did you find the podcast? I'm just curious about this. Drop that in the comments. We're both dying to know.
I also just want to thank everybody who are our loyal listeners, because it really means a lot to us. We have a platform, and we want to build this so that the values that we hold dear and the knowledge and the passion that we have for this stuff can be shared to the world. That's the whole point of being here. And you guys are a huge part of that. And, any content ideas and we've already gotten a bunch of ideas from listeners, but we really welcome it, guys. Anything that you especially liked that we did in the past, or something that you think we should try for the future, please let us know, and we will do it. We're always listening, and we're always receptive.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks, guys. As always, like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell so you can get notified when we drop an episode. Otherwise, peace out and go see some birds this week.
See you next week.